So welcome everyone to the Layer 5 community meeting. So today is November 12th and we have some topics lined up to discuss today. So the first topic was nomination of Piyush as maintainer, but Piyush hasn't joined yet, so maybe we will move that a bit down the line. And let's move on to the second topic.
Actually, Navendi, on that particular one, it's probably more of just calling out that he is being nominated and that people should take a look, give consideration.
Yeah. But yeah. I wanted to embarrass him.
I might have missed what you were saying as well. Were you saying, hey, it would be nice if he was on when we talked about it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, got it. All right. Fair enough.
Yep. So like to give a quick note on that, Piyush, most of you must have been familiar with Piyush's work. So Piyush has been involved in the community for quite a while, and Piyush, one of the things that he has been focusing on is Meshery CTL, the command line interface for Meshery. So Piyush is being nominated as a Meshery maintainer, and you can check out the announcements channel in the Layer 5 Slack, and you can give Piyush any comments, or you can vote whether he should be a maintainer or not. And the voting is open till Monday, and yep, we'll be updating about it then next week. And yep, so on the next topic, mesh map is on will be on going on beta soon. So this is an internal announcement to the community that you can sign up to beta test mesh map by signing up in this link. So you can get early access to mesh map, which will be going live in the next Meshery release. And yep, we were also thinking of maybe a mesh map demo today, like to get some people interested and to see what it's about. So yeah,
that'd be great. I'd love to see it.
So Mr. Utkarsh Pro.
Yep. I hope I'm audible. Yes, I am. Okay. So this is Mishri. I hope everyone here is familiar with this particular UI. So I am not sure how many of you do have access to this particular icon here or item in the menu bar. This is Mishmap. It is being promoted to beta. So if you also want this thing available on your menu bar, do fill up that beta form. If you would go to Mishmap, I am not getting. So if you would go to Mishmap, this is basically Mishmap. What you can do in Mishmap is two kind of things. First is you can design your components, design your basically your infrastructure, or what you can do is you can visualize your infrastructure. That is, you can basically see how many components are actually running. This is very cluttered right now because I'm running a lot of components, basically a lot of items, a lot of workloads are running in my environment. So let me filter it down. I have selected to show only pods, still a lot of them. I will filter more. I want to see only the items, and middle will be namespace. The intention is, as if you would see, the intention is actually to support multiple clusters, which is also coming to Mishri if someone's interested. So as you can see, the outermost boundary is actually main cluster. It clearly says that, okay, we do intend to support multiple cluster. Second box is middleware system. That is, we are identifying that this is the namespace you're talking about. Second, and the last one is actually the pod. So we are showing that you are running 2 pods in this particular namespace, and inside of it is actually container. I hope everyone gets that. What you can do is you can actually open terminal, or you can open logs from that particular component. So let's say I want to open terminal. Should have. Let's try that again. Oh, okay. Let's start this again. I'm logging into Mystery again, using Mystery provider. This is the provider where you will actually be able to access Mishmap, because Mishmap is a plugin offered by Mystery provider. I'm logging in. Let's get to Mishmap again. The visualizer is now if anyone has noticed, the visualizer is now the default view. That is, whenever you click on Mishmap, the default view that you get into is the visualizer one. Then you can filter basically, otherwise demoing. It still won't open. It's not opening because I was not selecting the right thing. I actually, so yeah, a caveat, when you are opening terminal, you're supposed to select pod and not the container, and it will do the stuff automatically. So it was as stupid as if I would actually try to open a terminal namespace. You can't open a terminal namespace. So yeah, that was going wrong. Now I clicked on pod and I tried to open the terminal and I got access to terminal. It's not executing because my mesh sync is not reachable at the moment. So yeah, this is basically Mishmap and Mishmap visualizer. We are opening up the beta program. You can actually fill up the form to have access to the same UI. Let's try to load up. This is a design. You can come in here and try to design your infrastructure in the designer. So that's pretty much it.
Nice. Does anybody have questions about this? Like, there were a few things that were mentioned, things like plugins, extension points, remote providers, visualizer, designer, service mesh patterns. Oh, there's kind of a lot in there. Does anybody have, who's got questions on what any of that stuff is? Or is it all fairly obvious? And by the way, I would be dumbfounded if all of those things made sense to everyone. So I'm just astounded at the IQ level of everyone on the call. Either that, or everyone's doing the natural thing of like, not really wanting to ask the question. Like, why don't we just wait until somebody else does? And okay, well, what's that, Yash? What's an extension point? Okay, yeah, Yash, let me tell you. Good, thank you, Megan. That's great. So good. Hey, I won't speak on this for very long, but what I will try to do is add some color to what Utkarsh just covered. I think it's pretty exciting. I'll say this. Actually, Utkarsh, do you mind? There's a link, an extensibility link inside of the Zoom chat. I wonder if you might bring that up. There's a diagram that's inside of the Meshry architecture deck that everyone who's on this call, since I recognize all of the names, has access to. You have access to the Layer5, the community drive, in which there's lots and lots of documents about Meshry and Nighthawk and service mesh performance and the various projects. One of the documents inside that drive is a slide deck, Meshry architecture. That's the name of the deck. it has this slide. And the reason I'm pointing it out is because it has a bunch of other slides that explain what the heck is going on inside of Meshry. This particular slide is slightly dated, this version here that's in the docs. So that's actually an opportunity for anyone who's on the call that wants to update this image. You would go to the Meshry architecture deck, go to this slide, file, download, export as SVG, and then just go to the docs here and make a pull request. Like it's not an iframed thing. It's a snapshot of a point in time, which you might consider is a little bit of a pain, a little bit of a pain to keep some of the content fresh, but it'll actually work out very beautifully soon. One of the meshmates here, Aditya, he's been working on versioning of the docs. And so that'll work out really well because at a particular Meshry version, this is the logical object model. And then as we move forward, actually, we're going to maybe talk about the .7 release of Meshry and its roadmap today, maybe. Or part of what, we're not going to conclude on the roadmap, but we're going to have part of that discussion. And the logical object model will change from version over version. So now that I've digressed into versioning of docs, let me come back to say that the logical object model inside of Meshry, has extension points. Extension points are purpose-built sections of the code or sections of the components that have APIs that are extendable, where any of you or folks like the architect from HPE that was asking in Slack yesterday for an overview of Meshry. HPE wants to integrate Spire into Meshry, and so they're going to bring a number of HPE engineers. There's a few that are in the Slack already, but in part they're attracted to Meshry for a bunch of reasons, but one of those is because of the extension points. So we refer to Meshry as a management plane, the service mesh management plane. There are some competitors to Meshry that have also picked up on that terminology, and kudos to them for recognizing our great thought leadership. And thank you to them for flattering us by copying us. That's great. Some of my jokes are too subtle, I think, to be funny. So I'll excuse all of you for. Anyway, so we refer to Meshry as the management plane presiding over service meshes. It would not be inaccurate to refer to Meshry as a service mesh management platform, in the sense that Meshry's object model and Meshry's code is littered with extension points. It becomes a platform for people to write plugins. If, as you all read through those docs, you don't have to grok everything that's in there. Don't, or I wouldn't. But something that I would be curious to hear from any of you, all of you, is, and Mario actually does a great job of these types of questions, like just to pick on Mario, but that is that is whether or not you understood what the purpose of each extension point is. And again, this diagram is slightly dated. There's a couple of additional extension points, but okay, so what Utkarsh is showing then is a plugin called MeshMap. And so that plugin, it plugs in not in both the user interface, which is why in the menu it's separated from the rest. And then it also plugs in some Golang. It adds some additional Golang to augment Meshry with some of this functionality. Some of what's been developed in this plugin, maybe we should bring some of that. I mean, a lot of what's been developed in the plugin, excuse me, has been brought into Meshry proper, and maybe we should bring more of that in. I don't know. It's kind of an open question as all of you go to understand what MeshMap is. And so to put more words against what Utkarsh has shown is, mesh map is a visual topology. It has two modes. It has a read-only mode, like I'll put an asterisk and some air quotes around read-only. This visualization mode shows you your current operating environment, your current runtime of all of your service meshes, all of the services and gateways and ingresses and egresses, sidecars and proxies and like that are happening, and lets you real time interact with your infrastructure. So a little bit of interactive terminal happening. Folks can, and maybe Utkarsh could show how you can initiate a log stream session. So if there was a given pod that you wanted to not interact with, but that you wanted to just stream logs from, his environment may or may not be set up for this. I don't think he had just said that it wasn't. So I don't expect that that'll work. But great, that's what this interface is about. And it's incomplete, it's about ready for beta, but it'll help people, if you're an operator, if you're responsible for the maintenance of the infrastructure, like this probably, or hopefully is really helpful to you. Helpful to take the blinders off, understand what's going on, see the innards of a service mesh, see how your workloads are running on top of it. As Utkarsh were to potentially click over to a like not just the details pane, but like the actions pane or the metrics one, like that people can, users can go in and invoke a performance test against a specific service. So they click on their service, click on run the test, which is the same thing that you can do in other parts of Meshry as well. This is just a different interface for doing it. Invoke a conformance test, maybe look at metrics for your pod or for your service. Check out the traffic that's going on, or CPU or memory, other things. Eventually there will be, there'll be some algorithms. There's a lot of machine learning that we ultimately want to, collectively, that we ultimately want to get into. I was just talking to a PhD candidate at Washington State University this morning, and well, there's a lot of, there's tons of ML to do here. Part of that is beginning to get exposed under the toolkit. We didn't know what else to call it for the moment, but there's a couple of algorithms that will perform different things. Some of this might be familiar to those that have studied in this area, but things like shortest path between one endpoint to the next. If you want more examples, actually come join the Nighthawk project and you'll get more examples of what we mean. But also that this interface, so good. So this is the visualizer, read-only mode that that has future roadmap against it. There's an alternative mode. Let's say you're running your infrastructure and it's time to change the way that traffic is routed, or it's time to set, configure how many retries you have. And so we might give Utkarsh a moment to go ahead and spin up an adapter. And I will do a song and dance while he does that, which is that users are allowed to switch over to this other mode in which this is the write mode, like it's time to configure their infrastructure, to make a bunch of changes, to visually design how they want for their Kubernetes systems and their service mesh systems and their workloads to run and to operate, how traffic should flow, how, whatever configurations that they want to do for any of the service meshes that Meshry supports. People can visually design that. They can then validate their designs. And part of the design validation is to leverage service mesh patterns. So there are any number of you that are on the call, and some of you that have this just happened to today. Your GitHub user has joined one or more of the GitHub organizations that the community stewards. The two most popular ones are the Layer5 IO org and the Meshry org. There are two other ones. One's called service-mesh-patterns. And that organization has a couple of repositories, but of those, that is intended to be a place to store service mesh patterns, templates for best practices on how to run a mesh and run it well. And if you, maybe one of us will paste a link to it so you can kind of look over the repo. Boy, typing and talking, I'll tell you what. Hard enough time spelling my name earlier. So some of you have contributed to this org and this repo. There's a link to it in the Slack chat now. Anyway, it's got some patterns that are emerging and being worked on, and those patterns are compatible with Meshry, so you can import those patterns. And then you can apply those patterns, and you can check that your design that you've visually designed inside of MeshMap, or not just visually designed inside of MeshMap, there's a pattern configurator that's being worked on and has been demoed in Meshry UI that users can use as an alternative, as another way to configure patterns. I'm sorry, design patterns. And so anyway, that's what this plugin is about. That's the kind of covers the fact that Meshry is extensible like this, that there are such things called service mesh patterns. It's an emergent concept for the project, one that needs a lot more explanation. Ultimately, some of you have seen this before and some of you have, if you were to go to Meshry.io, there's an unpublished, there is an unlinked to catalog of patterns. And so I'm here. So it's incomplete. This is kind of a first draft to like what a catalog might look like, to instead of people having to browse and look through YAML in the service mesh patterns org, they could browse and look through a catalog of patterns here and kind of visually understand what the different patterns are intended to do. You know, rate limiting, circuit breaking, retries, and so on, that users would be able to click on a pattern. Actually, I think you can click on a pattern today, hopefully get a modal that should say a lot more. This is kind of like a shopping experience. You're shopping for your patterns. And when you find one, you say, check out, and have Meshry import it and then apply it. Like, so, yeah. So if you're into front-end things, please go jump into this catalog and make it better, because it's just some quick work done by Meshmate Aditya. But so with that, it looked like the system, that the compilation there was going to take another 19 years before it was done. So I don't know if we want to wait for that.
Yeah, actually, although the compilation is done, because I'm running Meshry in a weird network. Actually, I have two systems running, so probably the registration is not going through. So
it's amazing that you get as much work done as you do with how slowly that compilation is going. All right. Anybody get so good? Now we've talked about a bunch of things. Who's got questions? Like where did some of that not really make sense? I'd be curious to hear from Husseina in particular. I don't know if Husseina, if you've had time to kind of digest some of these concepts.
I'm still processing a lot of it, and it looks like, I mean, whatever first demo, right? There are a lot of things, right? So I would need some more time to read through everything.
Right. Yeah. Some of it, I mean, I don't know if it looks the same to you, but some of it looks like Latin to me. Maybe it's because there's Latin on the page here, but some lorem ipsum going on. Yeah. Good. I don't know if that means.
Sorry, it's nice to be among polyglot collaborators.
Yeah. Hey, Mario, out of curiosity, just like I know you were joking, but you've seen the Spanish translation of the Meshery docs?
Yes, a bit on open source software community event.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Oh, great. Yeah. Okay. That's right. Okay. Does anybody else have questions or comment on? Like one of my comments is that some of the colors are like eye gouging. And so my right eye is actually starting to hurt from looking at that. I can feel it coming on in my left eye as well now too. It's really, oh, stop it. Oh, okay. All right, we should move on. But yeah, anyway, there's a beta sign up now. So any of you that are on the call, if you want to give that mesh map a shot, you're welcome to go fill in the form, and you'll be first on the list. Like it's about time to open up that beta. So.
Yes. Thank you, Utkarsh. Thank you, Lee. The next topic we have is the roadmap for Meshery v0.7. So we are now at like we are going to release v0.6 quite soon. So it is time to look into what features to build and what needs to be done for the next major release. So Lee, would you like to?
Yeah, I'll try to be brief. People just had to listen to me. Unfortunately, like a few of the rest of these are maybe from me, but I'm gonna try to ask some questions of folks on the call. So there's a roadmap.md in the Meshery repo today, in the root of the repo. And quite some long time ago, we had foreshadowed what we think, or we gave a best guess as to what might come within those upcoming releases. And so what does it tell us for the .7 release? All right, so it talks about a workflow engine. So it talks about a new architectural component for Meshery. This, and so the discussion that we're having right now is not final, and really we're trying to open up the discussion about roadmap. And so please take these statements with a grain of salt and take them as soliciting of your input. The thought is that there's probably a couple of architectural components that Meshery still needs before it hits a 1.0. One of those is a workflow engine. What's a workflow engine? It is, well, rather than describing what it is, I'll say maybe what it enables. If there's a workflow engine inside of Meshery, users could benefit from things like maybe being notified in Slack when traffic on their service mesh is not doing what it's supposed to do. And it would be through workflow that a threshold crossing would be discovered. Then through workflow that Meshery would be configured to notify a particular thing like Slack or something else. Or to maybe through workflow, then if no one acknowledges that alert in Slack or wherever it's sent, to then notify again. or then notify the whole channel, or like to go through workflow, various sequential steps to perform over time, various actions, and to, I think in its first rendition in .7 is to have that type of a capability built in natively on workflow engine. I'm sorry, not natively. Yes, it's to have it built in natively, but I mean to have it built in with a few opinionated workflows to help Meshry do things like provision a service mesh and then onboard a workload and then do a performance test on top of the workload. Like those are three big steps, individual flows or activities inside of what might be a larger workflow. So what if you tell Meshry to do that? Because you could take a pattern file that describes that you want a service mesh, that you want a workload on it, and that you want it to pass a performance test. Well, my goodness, like that might take a little while, take 10, 15, 20, whatever minutes for all of that to happen, especially depending upon how long your performance test runs. And, if the test comes back not looking so great, maybe you want to roll back and you don't want your application out there. And so a workflow engine can help facilitate that, like the concept of rolling back, or the concept of, oh, the workload didn't onboard correctly, that failed, okay, stop, don't do the performance test. And to have to hard code all of that, that's fragile and not configurable. Hence a generic capability of a workflow engine to let people say, well, I have things that I want to do, like performance tests, or notify Slack, or send an email, provision a service mesh, or whatever those things are, and then tie them together. So it wouldn't be until like a .8 release or subsequent release that we might be able to expose to people to users, the convenient ability to line up, to design workflows. Maybe that's visually, maybe that's just in terms of like a service mesh pattern, but that's what that entry is about. Comments on that first bullet point. It does say workflow engine, policy, which is a bit of a foreshadowing to the notion that, well, a policy engine is somewhat necessary as well. Why do we need another component? Well, it's like, well, because, here's building on those examples, it's like, one of the first things I had said is maybe maybe your service isn't responding promptly. Maybe the latency of the responses back to users who are using your services that are running on your mesh, maybe it's too slow. Maybe your SLO or your SLA dictates a higher, a more performant set of infrastructure. Maybe you want to do something about that. Okay, good. Well, you can go in and statically configure a threshold of like 250 milliseconds response time or something like this. So just, that sounds, but like if you're able to do that and configure it as a policy and say, well, our policy for these services looks like this, 250 milliseconds, and for these like this, and you're able to, it's a lot more powerful when you're able to express policy and then apply it to various parts of your infrastructure. And so that's what that policy is about. Policy engine. So yeah, so that's a whole mouthful. I don't believe that would land in a .7. I think that the policy engine would come later. Actually, the v.9 UEC policy engine. So I don't know, maybe I'm misinterpreting what's written behind workflow engine, policy. I don't know. Anyway, the other thing to come in .7 is something that many of you have been called to test. So, and that is the notion that today, Meshry it interacts with one Kubernetes cluster at a time. You can connect it to your Kubernetes cluster. There's a small chip in the UI, and that's it, like one at a time. Well, so in .7, Meshry would support concurrent connections to many different clusters. And so work on that is actually in flight. Actually, the work on that is ready for testing at this point. And there's instructions on discuss.layer5.io to test that. You can go connect Meshri to multiple Kubernetes clusters now. And so Utkarsh, if you're sharing the screen, maybe you could quickly share that URL with people about how to test. Or somebody else will grab it and dump it into the chat. So the other items in .7 are a messaging framework and notification center. Oh yes. So I'm glad Meghana is on the call and a few of the rest of you. But one of the areas where if I was operating Kubernetes and Service Mesh infrastructure and I go to use Meshri, I might be a little shy about using Meshri for some of its operations. And that is in part because when I click on an operation in Meshri and I ask it to provision a service mesh, for example, the user gets feedback in the UI. They get a small snack bar or toaster notification that says your operation has been submitted and is being processed. And then some indeterminate amount of time later, usually 5 minutes or less, they'll get another notification saying provisioning complete, or your requested operation is done. And there's nothing in the middle, or very little in the middle. They're kind of left guessing, like, when is it going to be done? And are you still working on that, or did it fail? And so the notion that there is a notification center today, and people do see those notifications, and they can go in and look over the history of what operations they performed, but it's weak, or it's not robust in functionality. It would be really nice if people could go over, and it wouldn't just be a notification center, it would be more of an operations center. And I guess that's what we need to figure out in this next release is, are there 2 centers, or are we just going to augment and enhance the existing center to not just show notifications, but show ongoing operations? Like, oh yeah, you requested that Linkerd be provisioned. Here's your pending request. It's currently in flight. Click for details or what have you. But right now, a lot of these notifications, there's a couple of things that they're fairly ephemeral. They are helpful, but many of them tease you. So if, Navendu, if you were to click on the notification center again and go to see details of like the successful provisioning of Linkerd. Okay, good. So Linkerd service mesh installed successfully. Beautiful. The details. Linkerd service mesh is now installed. Really? You don't say, or maybe you said that twice. Like, where are the details? Where is it installed, and how? And how can I get to it? And like, don't tease me. You know, like, so fine. That's just like a small enhancement to say, here's some details. By the way, here's here's a link that would take you to the dashboard that shows you the full details of your Linkerd deployment. Oh, that would be nice. Or like Linkerd version such and such is installed with blah, blah, blah. Like, but so this needs to be augmented and enhanced, not just for the notifications and their usefulness, but also for operations that users invoke. Like, I'm running a performance test, but I wouldn't know that. I would know it because I remember that I clicked the button and it said, we'll run the test, but I don't see the progress anywhere. That's what that operations center would be about, or an enhanced notification center would be about. There is an open design spec in the community drive called Messaging Framework and Notification Center. And it talks about some enhancements to the things that I've just said. It also talks about the, what's the right, anyway, it also talks about the format of the messages that are exchanged between different Meshri components. So between the Meshri adapters and Meshri server, between Meshri operator, Meshri server, between what will be an external, the load generators that we have today, Meshry has, they will be, one of them will be externalized so that a user can have many instances of the load generator. And anyway, those become components as well. So they need to talk, all of these components need to talk to one another in a common format. And that today, that format in the .6 release has been enhanced around the use case of error codes and a nice error code system, in which error code, every error has its own unique code, and it has a description of the issue, a probable cause, and a suggested remediation. Good. Now we need to reflect on the messaging system and the format of those messages in context of not just errors, but operations and policies and workflow operations and their status. So this is in focus for .7. So it's really important. So yeah, good. If we go back, okay, good. So please, anyone interrupt or ask questions as we go. Yeah, Mesh Ops Center, nice. There's definitely, yeah. You guys are into the portmanteaus. Don't encourage me. Or so by the way, we've a few different times in the community, we've had to name something new, and we'll go around and generate a list and ask for votes, and so that's actually how mesh map, that term came to be. It came from one of our users. Mesh Ops is good. So, okay, if we scroll down a smidge to Meshry CTL roadmap, got a .7, okay? Some things here. Okay, what we don't have broken out is Meshry UI in its separate roadmap. Meshry UI as a component, its roadmap is one and the same of Meshry server, or it's captured in the same area. Maybe we should break that out. There is and maybe we'll talk about the Meshry CTL enhancements here in just a second, but there is a very significant and noteworthy piece of work for Meshry UI in this upcoming release. And it's one that has been talked about quite a bit. And that is the transition, the incorporation of Redux and observables into Meshry UI, the upgrade to React 17, is that, am I getting it right, or 16, 17? And Material UI 5 as well. And there's progress underway. There's design that's been done a long time ago. There's progress underway in transitioning, rewriting some of those components. That rewrite gives us an opportunity to do some better user experience. I don't mean necessarily aesthetics of like colors and shapes and things like that. I mean like user flows, like particularly around the dashboard and the lifecycle management screen. And so that should, someone on the call should definitely go PR that roadmap and add a line item that says, incorporation of Redux into the UI. Okay, so before I harangue you all with stuff about enhancements on Meshry CTL, let me pause and ask, what do you all think? Or it was kind of a mouthful just to say it. So it's like, okay, well, when would we deliver something like this? It's like, well, I don't know, you tell me. Or like, I don't know, it depends on how much free time Megan has. And I couldn't tell you. She's got an exam schedule she's got to keep to. So, but anyway, that it's kind of up to all of you to answer it. We have an ideal cadence and pace. Folks like Mario are here that really help us, really give us confidence to move faster as we have the right test harnesses and test framework. Yeah, so we would do well to take a lot of what I just verbalized and get it into a couple of slides or so, so that it becomes easier to reason over what's trying to be accomplished and why. Maybe that's the wrong order in which we're trying to accomplish things. So. Let's not go over the mastery CTL stuff but other things that we had to discuss for today. There's a couple. Okay, there are a couple of good reminders. Like there's a call for all of you to go try out the learning paths that have just been released. There's a new learning path called Mastering Service Meshes for Developers. It's a 2-course series. Each course has about 8 chapters. There's some interactive labs and things in there. Please go try it out. See if we've got any bugs. See if you learn anything. See if right now it's available on Istio, and half of it is available on Linkerd. The intention is for there to be at least 2 other learning paths, one for operators, another one for security engineers, eventually maybe one for product managers, maybe. Part of what needs to be done is like make this content of at least learning paths available on other types of service meshes as well. So there's that. There's another call for Navendu, if you're sharing the screen, there's an emergent resources area on Layer5 IO. So it's Layer5, and actually Deepak, I don't know, Deepak, do you want to try to describe this to folks? To be put on the spot, Deepak? And it would be /topics right now. So very briefly, there's an opportunity for any of you to go write some stuff or go review some stuff. There's certainly the blog that's out here, and you're welcome to blog on any number of things. But some of what is shared with website visitors is timeless, and would do best not to sit inside of a blog post. And needs to be structured a bit differently. And so there's an emergent new area. It's currently called topics, but it should be renamed to resources. And it'll be a different way of kind of browsing through a lot of instruction and information that we have that we really yet to publish. So if you're into that kind of a thing, please jump in. Also, like, hey, while we're on it, so we all of us here, many of you, by the way, it's really cool to see that a lot of you will do this. When someone new joins the community, you'll say hi and you'll welcome them and you'll try to support them and you'll engage with them, understand who they are and tell them about what's going on, and it's amazing. And we try to be really intentional and purposeful about the experience that individuals have in the community. Part of that then is their onboarding experience, and that's in part what the Meshmate, not in part, that's like what the Meshmate program is about. But there's also an ongoing contributor ladder. Like there's an ongoing sequence of, there's growth for all of us that are here. I think we're all learning. And there's a ladder in which the longer that you're here, the more that you're consistently engaging and significantly engaging, that there are different roles to take on and different recognitions to receive. Those recognitions come in a bunch of different forms. Some of you are familiar with some of those steps. Some of you are really familiar with a lot of the steps because you've been through a lot of what's there. It might be that we should, I think in the past, we've kind of shared what that contributor ladder looks like. It's not, I shouldn't say ladder as much as journey. I think that's a more appropriate word. And so the reason that this is a topic on today's agenda is that one of the contributors, Zane, has been well, there's a number of people who've been working to get us off of a Google form. So when you come to the community and you sign up using a Google form, the form is at layer5.io/newcomer. That form, if we take a quick look, is, fairly straightforward. It's not very long. It's aimed at trying to understand the individual and what they're into and how to best orient them to the community and to the project. So it's just a couple of short forms, a couple of short questions. And it's also meant to provide people with a tour of the community, get them access to resources, that kind of a thing. I don't know why I'm explaining this to all of you, because all of you except for Festus, who's on the call, it's nice to have on the call, Festus, have gone through this. And the community, the Google form is fine. All of us have filled those in before for whatever reasons. Although a number of members had worked on an alternative version of this, so web-based, a non-Google form. So Nivendu, if you were to browse to layer5io/community/newcomer as a singular noun, I believe there is a web-based, there is a web-based version of this same, okay, maybe not. Maybe if you just go to layer5io/newcomers, like we're trying to have a few things published at the same time. And so that's why the newcomers, okay. So we're hoping that this web-based form will displace the Google form. And it does, it's got all the same questions. People go through the same 4 steps. And we were just hoping to, provide a curated experience that feels a little more first class, if you will. And it's kind of an interesting thing. Layer5io, runs on GitHub pages. And so how you process a form like this, you can't just do all of that on GitHub. So Zane was working on workflow on the back end to receive the submissions and process them. So I don't think we can really advance on that topic other than just to explain to people in part like the mechanics of the community and the fact that people contribute on, there's a bunch of different technologies that are used here. People contribute in a bunch of different ways. So good. With that, anybody got comments, questions, anything else to chat about today?
I'll try the learning path.
Yeah, thank you.
No, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I've actually filled the Google Doc form. Do I need to fill the web-based one again?
You don't, but it might be a nice test. Yeah, Festus, that's a great question.
Okay.
Yeah, no, yeah. By the way, Festus, then you snuck by me, or I didn't realize that you'd already filled it. Nice to, Festus, have you gotten a chance to say hi on one of these calls before?
Yes, the newcomers meeting.
Oh, got you. Okay. Oh, very good. Good. And so, Festus, did you get access to a Google Drive and a couple emails?
Google Drive? No,
okay.
Not yet.
If you filled in the form and you didn't get access to the drive, do you recall when you filled in the form, did you use a Gmail account?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. If you would maybe message in the newcomers channel, let's make sure that you've got access to those resources.
Okay, I will.
Yeah. Turns out we don't need much of an agenda for me to just talk about all the stuff that you all are doing. So I want to congratulate Piyush on his nomination. That's pretty fantastic. The guy has bled for it. There's some things that Piyush has seen through that it's impressive. And then I'm hoping next week we might be talking a little bit about Mr. Wick and some of the work that he's been doing and some of the work that we're hopeful he'll continue to do. So as a cliffhanger. Who didn't sign up for beta since we were on the call? Like, I'm gonna go sign up. Anything else, Navendu? Or?
Nope. So that was it for what we plan to discuss today.
Any comments from anybody? Like, oh yeah, so Mario, thank you for the learning paths thing. Yeah, please don't. And by the way, I mean the learning paths themselves, they're open source. As you find bugs, like don't hold back, or if you find bugs.
Okay, I will.
Yeah, some of the people that are on the call, they are actively helping with the learning paths. Cool.
So we are right at time. So that, I guess that's it for this week's Layer5 community meeting. We'll meet again same time next week. I hope you all have a great weekend, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye, guys.
Thanks. Bye.